Recording has started.
There's an echo from someone. Yes.
वासुदेवेन्द्र योगेन्द्रं नत्वा ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुं मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय तत्त्वबोधो विधीयते। नित्यं शुद्धं निराभासं निराकारं निरञ्जनं नित्यबोधं चिदानन्दं गुरुं ब्रह्म नमाम्यहम्। साधनचतुष्टय सम्पन्ना अधिकारिणां मोक्षसाधनभूतं तत्त्वविवेकप्रकारं वक्ष्यामः। साधनचतुष्टयं किम्? नित्य अनित्यवस्तुविवेकः, इहामुत्रार्थफलभोगविरागः, समाधिषट्कसम्पत्तिः, मुमुक्षुत्वं चेति। नित्य अनित्यवस्तुविवेकः कः? नित्यवस्तुविवेकं ब्रह्म, तद्व्यतिरिक्तं सर्वमनित्यम्, अयमेव नित्य अनित्यवस्तुविवेकः। विरागः कः? इह स्वर्गभोगेषु इच्छाराहित्यम्, इहामुत्रार्थफलभोगविरागः, समाधिसाधनसम्पत्तिः कः? शमोदम उपरति, sorry, 1 second. शमोदम उपरति, तितिक्षा, श्रद्धा, समाधान च इति।
शमोदम उपरतिः.
शमोदम उपरतिः.
The sa here has converted into visarga.
तितिक्षा.
And then titiksha shraddha samadhanam cha iti.
तितिक्षा श्रद्धा समाधानं च इति। शमः कः?
शमः कः?
शमः कः?
मनोनिग्रहः.
मनोनिग्रहः.
दमः कः?
दमः कः?
चक्षुरादि बाह्येन्द्रिय निग्रहः.
चक्षुरादि बाह्ये इंद्रिय निग्रहः.
उपरमः कः?
उपरमः कः?
स्वधर्मानुष्ठानमेव.
स्वधर्मानुष्ठानमेव।
तितिक्षा का?
तितिक्षा का?
शीतोष्ण सुख दुःखादि.
शीतोष्ण सुख दुःखादि।
सहिष्णुत्वम्.
सहिष्णुत्वम्।
श्रद्धा कीदृशी.
श्रद्धा कीदृशी।
गुरुवेदान्तवाक्यादिषु
गुरुवेदान्तवाक्यादिषु
विश्वासः
विश्वासः
समाधानं किम्
समाधानं किम्
चित्तैकाग्रता
चित्तैकाग्रता.
Very good, thank you. We'll continue from the last class. What is Shamaha? Shamaha has been here defined as or summarized as Mano Nigraha. Shamaha by word itself means peace, quietude, tranquility. Sham is the root word, means shant hona ya karna. So when you say Shama means Mano Nigraha, it means the processing or the process of quietening the mind. Man ko shant karna. And shant is not just absence of thought. Shant is with reference to thoughts also. The mind is tranquil, peaceful, despite there being thoughts. Most people understand silence to be the state of quietude. Now, when there is silence, तो मन शांत हो गया. There is quiet in the mind. है ना? मतलब जब मन में means you are associating silence with shanti. But shanti as in shamaha means your thoughts, your thinking can be there, but you, the mind is tranquil, is peaceful. There is calmness in the mind. The technique or the process or how does one make the mind calm? The Shastra gives us few indications. It actually explains to us what happens to the mind. It doesn't directly tell us how to quieten the mind. How to do Shama, that is not said. But how the mind gets disturbed, that is said. So scriptures are explaining what happens. What you must derive from it is left to the person. Means once I understand how it gets disturbed, it's left to me to discover how to make it peaceful. There will be indications given. There will be some methodology, some ideas thrown which we can employ and find it. Last time we saw this example, very famous example, and we dealt it in details. What does Mano Nigraha mean in this? Senses are our 5 senses, organs of perception: hearing, smelling, seeing, touching, tasting. They are all held by one mind. Mano Nigraha means when these horses are violent, means they are excited. They get excited when they see their respective objects. इंद्रियों को जब उनका विषय मिल जाता है तो वो एक आनंद फील करते हैं. एक stimulation होता है. Actually, आनंद is our perception, but they get stimulated. Factually, all that's happening is when the sense organ meets the sense object, there is a stimulation of the senses. This stimulation is interpreted further as happiness or not is in the mind. But because the senses get excited, stimulated, when they receive their objects, information, and based on likes and dislikes, the mind runs with them. If they are very powerful, the senses are powerful, वो मन को खींच लेता है. Just as a horse can take away the reins with it if the holder of the reins is not strong. So average person in the world who hasn't learned self-discipline, who hasn't learned mind discipline, who hasn't learned mind control, who hasn't been from the very young age, from childhood, in the Vedika vision, controls were not established later on. Controls were put very early, earlier the better. So while the child's inner body is developing, the same time the restraints were also introduced so that the child understands how to employ the power of restraint. Restraint didn't mean suppression. It didn't mean not growing your individuality. Restraint actually meant maturing your individuality, carving your individuality. So, Mano Nigraha means when your control is established within you, and you are the one who chooses your strength of the perceptions, means the sense engagements. When the person chooses the sense engagements, it's under the person's control. That is Manonigraha. And mind by itself will only get the strength to control if your intellect is sharp, if your intellect is powerful, if your powerful just means is clear on the data, is clear on what it is perceiving, what it is seeing, what it is hearing. It is clear on factual information, what is right and what is wrong. It has its own sense of value structure based on which it operates, it guides the mind, and the mind guides the horses. That way, the journey of the person who is, this chariot is the body, his journey, the person's journey would be a fairly enjoyable journey in this lifespan. This chariot is meant to take us from experience to experience in life, and it can be a smooth ride if your inner faculties are well developed. That is the purpose of Tamaha. But we are going to go a little more in details, as I am helpless to always do so, in the sense that a little more data is always useful than less data, because in time they will all make much more sense. We said mind by itself is a very restless entity for most of us, left alone by itself because of it being attached to the horses, the senses, and senses run in all directions, so mind also runs in all directions. Now you find yourself that the mind actually is fundamentally moving in the direction, in the coordinates of time and space. Mind has only a perception, thought. Thought travels as if, exists, abides in coordinates of time and space. If you have any thought, recollect, remember, just have any thought, and you will realize that a thought always seems to be either in some space related, tab hua tha, and jab aap kaho tab hua tha, so you have this image of place along with it, time along with it. So you have these two inseparable coordinates as if. Now, being together, the mind, I said in the last class, either is always in the past or in the future. Plans in the future, or some memory of the past incident, and past to Vedanta clearly means this moment backwards. Any this moment backward, every this moment backward is a past moment, which means if it is 11:20, 11:19 and a half was past, and everything behind it is past, because our definition of past is very comprehensive. It includes many janmas. It includes, you'll see it later. So basically what happens to mind is, it moves into the past and the future, And what loses the control is what we are talking. With every thought, if you see, the thought with associations travels in different times and spaces very quickly. And many thoughts together is what makes the mind restless. So what really is control of the mind? If you say that I have to control the mind, I must have some restraint over my own thoughts. I must, what is joyful is when we choose which thoughts we want to abide by. When you hear in the world, some people say I have a very negative mind, or you tell somebody you have a very negative mind, why don't you be more positive? Or some people tell you, why are you not more positive? Have positive thoughts, don't have negative thoughts. It's so easy, don't have negative thoughts and have positive thoughts. What does it mean? It means the content of your thought जिससे related है, that should be in your control. अपने आप से मन जाता ही है naturally wherever it is already known. So when you have more control over it, you find that you can choose the content in your thought. Most of us would stay in this Shastra study, stay with it in spite of everything and despite of everything, because it gives us an option of another content completely to your thought. Left alone by itself, the mind will only move into the realms of what it understands as what the senses give it. But content of your thought is under your control. किसके बारे में विचार कर रहे हो? किसको लेके आपका थॉट सोच रहा है? आपका थॉट किस पे बेस्ड है? किसको लेके बेस्ड है? क्या चीज है जो वो absorb कर रहा है, किस बारे में सोच रहा है, all those kind of words. So if it is not in your control, you find all the thoughts are running helter-skelter. Everybody, this is obviously just a simplistic diagram, thought 1, thought 2, thought 3, it doesn't work like this. We all understand this. This is just to say that the coordinates are such that you will realize every thought does not stay at one place. It travels sometimes upar, niche, idhar, udhar, kahan se kahan, associated words. You know how we used to play dumb charades as kids when we have played? I'm sure you play even now. People, dumb charades, I think that's what it's called, when you keep passing one word to another and the other person has to, by the time what is that word? That's another game? Okay,
Chinese
that's another
whisper.
game.
Chinese
Oh,
whisper.
that's Chinese whisper. Okay, that's Chinese whisper. Yeah, but one of these games, whatever it indicates, that by the time it comes back to you, the word has changed. Chinese whisper, correct. The word has changed. How has the word changed? And it has always been fascinating. If everybody is so sure they heard it correctly, then how is it that the word came back as not the right word? Because something changed. The hearer is the important person. The listener is the important person. Now here, going a little more, how is it, where is the control established in today's world from today's standards? The Ratha example is our Shastra example. It very clearly tells us the mind is by itself needs control. It cannot be the one which controls. The important takeaway of that point is mind itself needs another controlling factor. Mind cannot be controller. Mind by itself doesn't control anything. If you want nigraha of the mind, the nigraha of the mind must happen from somewhere. That is essential. To understand that, I said one of the things in the mind is that every perception generates a ripple in the mind. Last class I said that. Now I'm only analyzing this statement further. I'm elaborating the statement further. What is the statement? That anything that our senses are engaged with, our mind receives it and it generates a ripple there. How is this done? Let's say you saw something. Over here on a walk, I saw this beautiful plant. It's actually a gooseberry plant. I'd never seen it as a sapling. This is a gooseberry plant, and it's really, to my mind, I felt it was beautiful because the photograph doesn't show so clearly, but before the chlorophyll has formed for the other leaves, there is this brownness, or this such design over there. The minute you've seen this, your eyes contacted it. That's all that happened. Now, what happens once the eyes have contacted it? Our biology, our modern science has elaborated it further. It goes and triggers the vision center here in the brain. This is internet images, so you can find it on them. The brain has different centers. The minute there is eye, some kuch dikha hai, it has triggered a center here. This is the vision center, this is the balance center, this is the speech center, etc. All the centers. It triggers the vision center. Once it triggers the vision center, now be a little careful. This is something that may be a little different. Up to this point, psychology would call this close to as mind. We understand mind and brain almost simultaneous sometimes. Now science is beginning to get a little more trying to find out that there's a difference, but so far let's say they take them together. This is the place because this is what it stimulates in the brain. To us in Vedanta, your brain and your eye, the center that it has placed, these are both called your sense organs. They are external organs. You can't say brain is internal and eye is external. Whatever triggers the brain in the perception, both are one unit and both are external sense organs. What happens once this vision has got stimulated? This comes as a process of recognition. This recognition, here I'm going to say this particular diagram is perception. This is, say, you are receiving information, cognition, just different words, you can play with them. Here in this diagram, I'm saying cognition. You're becoming cognitive, means there is knowledge happening. But once this knowledge has happened, it doesn't stop there. Here starts the process of perception, where Vedanta says, Shastra says, is where your mind starts to come into play. The mind is playing its role in the perception stage of experience. What is that perception? Mind to us, I said in the last class, is actually one of the parts of Antakaranam. Karanam is instrument, the inner instrument. This and this means brain and your senses are your Bahya Karanam, external instruments. They are at the realm of the body. Brain is a part of the body. So when the body dies, this dies. But to Shastra, to Vedic vision, your mind does not die with the body. When the body dies, the mind is not dying. The mind is a part of your Antakaranam, inner instrument. An inner instrument is made up of mind, manas, buddhi, chit, ahankar. Mano, buddhi, chit, ahankar. Ahankar is the egoistic attribute. Chit is the awareing aspect of you. But in one another meaning, it is also the memory aspect in you. Buddhi we have understood, and mind we are now already understanding. So all four of them together is antakaranam, and sometimes loosely just called mind in English. But whenever we say mind in our context of Shastra, we mean antakaranam. Now, antakaranam is what is now perceiving the stimulus received by a bahya karanam. Now, this is again a simple perception model which says there is a selection of perception, the selection of what I see. Someone has chosen the selection of what I wish to see. I go for a walk, supposing, and I have many things in front of me, but I have selected to see this. I have chosen out of the whole large view, a beautiful park in front of me, something took my attention. Something stood out for me. It may not stand out for you. What stands out for you will not stand out for me. May not stand out for me. So you see, the selection becomes a subjective process. I select what I am seeing, what I am hearing, what I am tasting, what I am touching, what I am engaged with. This selection, once the perception has been formed, I have to organize it. It means not I have to. It goes through the process of organization. It can be left unorganized, or you organize it. And further, this organized selection has above all an interpretation. This interpretation is what we are calling as perception. Interpreting your sensory stimulus. This interpretation is very subjective. We have all known this. I think we all understand this. Is extremely subjective. Like, for example, for me, I can go on looking at this plant for very, very long because there is something ecstatic about it. There's too much of a rhythm here. But for someone else, what is there that you see as a beauty there? What is there? Okay, fine. But every aspect of life is like that, etc., etc. Anything it can be. Or it could be something else. Now, my interpretation of the senses is what plays an important role into what we call reaction and response further. This receipt of stimulus, the receipt of stimulus from the world, is reacting in us. There is a reaction to us, in us, and this reaction is based on which I give a response back in the world. What do I do, what I don't do, what I avoid, what I seek, what I generate, what I produce, what I shun, what everything, all my responses, emotional, physical, every response of mine is actually coming from something behind. If you take the arrow behind, the response, this is a cycle. The response seems to have some sort of a reaction. The reaction has come from receipt. The receipt itself is now, the arrow can be redone a little bit. The receipt has a reaction, the reaction has a response, and based on the response, I choose my receipts again. A cycle which continues. Now, I don't know if I can go back. I could, very good. Now, if I come back to this, interpretation to us in Shastra Drishti is, this Antakaranam is something that doesn't die, which means It holds all your perceptions, I'm making a very big statement quite out of the context of the present class and topic, but in the Vedic view, your antakarnam is beginningless. It is something that you carry with you. And the selection of your stimulus is the control which you start exhibiting. What is Mano Nigraha? Mano Nigraha is at all these levels. At the level of the selection of your thought. What am I choosing? At the level of the organization, what I wish to keep in me, what I don't. Supposing my ears are open all the time and I hear my neighbor fighting and shouting and calling each other all kinds of the words, what are they called? Abusive language. When they use all kinds of abusive language, which we are not sanctioned, I cannot use them, supposing, but it's a very popular words now. Your ears cannot be close to them. तुमने सुन लिया. I can't get out of those hearing words now. I've already heard them. But I can organize the word in me. I can give a value to that word in me. I can interpret the word in me. I can choose what to do with the word in me. Now, Mano Nigraha, people have very badly understood it as only suppression, control. Control word indicates as if रोक के रखना, because हमने लगाम word use किया है ना, तो pulling back the mind, so you just feel, oh, I am not allowed any sense pleasure, I am not allowed any sense interaction, I am not allowed etc. It is at a very different level. You are not allowed is never said. But each person chooses by their own self what is the perception you think is beneficial for you. What perception you think is harmful for you. What perception you think is obligatory for you. What perception you think is necessary for you. What perception actually is prohibited for you. Most of us, and I am taking a sweeping statement, most of the people do not think in terms of prohibition. If there is something prohibitory, then I may have a thought, but if it's prohibitory, I must control it. I cannot encourage it. I cannot let the thought run its course without interference from me. Supposing there's a prohibitory thought. Now this is a very beautiful image, but supposing I replace the image as I'm talking, it suddenly struck me, maybe I should have made another slide and I'd put an alcohol bottle here. Many alcohol, one is okay, many alcohol bottles here. And I had the senses and I have the taste and I have the smell, and I guess there's nothing more you can do with an alcohol. You have all three. In a plant, you can't at the moment have this. It's simplified version. It's just sight. You can smell it, but at this stage, it's not a smellable thing. Now, supposing it's an alcohol. Now, what has it done? It has definitely triggered something. What Shastra says is, your triggering mechanism that you have in your antakarnam is in your control, because though the thoughts may be going along with it and they are based on what you have accumulated from the past, your past perceptions, but in the present there are certain regulations that you put on yourself, and those regulations are what are based on certain goals of your life. So if as a child I was allowed to have certain pleasures, maybe as a grown-up with my present goals of life, they are not necessary. Like, for example, Okay, forget the example. Let's focus on this only. Mano Nigraha fundamentally then would mean I can select my perception. I have a choice over what I organize it, how I organize it. I have a choice over what I interpret it as. At any moment of time, your mind by itself, if left alone to itself, without supervision from you, is bound to go by the senses, and senses have the basic stimulus of pleasure or pain in it, likes and dislikes. कुछ पसंद आएगा तो खींचेगा. Now, if I did not like this plant, if I don't like nature, supposing, how can my senses be holding them? I'm not going to hold them because I don't like them. The senses will have certain stimulus, and how you've interpreted that stimulus in the past is what is giving you your likes and dislikes now. And these likes and dislikes at this point of time is what we said was raga dvesha. And that raga dvesha is on its own, when it expresses, is what is the disturbance of the mind. And when there is control of that raga dvesha, it becomes shamaha. It brings peace of the mind. How? Because if any selection is only based on raga dvesh, if my selection is based on what I like and what I don't like, then I am in trouble, because many things that I don't like, I ought to be doing. Like, for example, I love to eat and eat and eat, but I should not be just eating and eating without exercising. That means I need to control it. I can only eat as much as I can burn, supposing. That means all likes and dislikes will have to be regulated, and regulating them, bringing the mind back to its state of quietude, tranquility, is where this says is mano nigraha. A perception has by itself ripples in the mind. These ripples are integrated with our past experiences. So they set a chain of reaction. The past experiences have been interpreted in the past. They are there in our memory as a part of our antakarna. With the present perception, the past intermingles, past perception intermingles, as a result of which my reactions and my responses are mostly uncensored. They're just there. They just come out before I recognize them. And that uncensored life is what Shastra says is actually not conducive to your well-being. That capacity you have to build to say quietude of the mind. Now this is where mano nigraha works. This mano nigraha also has another from another standpoint. This mano nigraha has been spoken of in a different way, which is actually saying the tranquility virajya vishaya vratat. Vishaya vratat means vishaya vrat, the aggregate of sense objects. Samu, the multitude of sense objects. Virajya. Now you know the word. When it's withdrawn from this. How did you withdraw it? This also we have seen now. Dosha drishtaya muhur muhu. By constantly seeing the flaw of that perception. Dosha drishti banana. Dosh drishti, I did not particularly use the word that time because we have the tendency to interpret the word dosha drishti as finding faults in others. Dosha drishti, in the way Shastra uses, is finding fault in the imposition that we have made of saying that this is going to give me happiness. Find the fault in it so that you can correct yourself कि किसी चीज में वो आनंद नहीं आएगा, कोई विषय में वो आनंद नहीं है जो हम ढूंढ रहे हैं. I'll repeat this again. Coming back to our portions of Vairagya, that we impose happiness on sense perceptions, sense pleasures. We say, Arey, this is what I wanted, this is what I desired, now I have got it, I'm a very happy person, etc. We impose that value on it. The Pratipaksha Bhavna is finding the flaw in our thought, thinking, approach, so that I am able to neutralize that excessive value that I have given to it. Dosha Drishti means that I am able to recognize that the sense object is not all that complete and I find a flaw in it. जो उसमें है, क्योंकि ये पूर्णता नहीं है. My capacity to discover the flaw of that जिसमें मैंने इतना value base किया हुआ है, so that I lose some excessive value in it. Muhur muhuhu, constantly, repeatedly, again and again. I do that with reference to my mind seeking its happiness from sense pleasures. When I have done this, the virajya, from that when I get vairagya, and further, swalakshye niyata avastha, manasaha, and when the mind is resting permanently on its swalakshya, अपने लक्ष्य पे वो उसको स्थिर रखना, मन को withdrawing it away from the happiness seeking mode in sense pleasures, what I call it as extroverted pursuit. When you have withdrawn the mind from its extroverted pursuit and centered it on, directed it on your own lakshya, swalakshya, niyata avastha, it remains on that. That is called shama. That is called mind control. See how it is different from, I'm constantly using the word suppression because at least in my initial years of teaching, it was one of the toughest things to convey to people. Shastra has never ever advocated suppression. Shastra advocates growing out of petty enjoyments, growing out of petty involvements. Shastra's vision is too magnified. It's too glorious that it does not want human beings to be diminished. Shastra shows the way to magnify your own self, to grow your own self. And suppression certainly cannot be a way of growth. So how does control really fits into it? Control by word is interpreted as नियंत्रण में रखना, दबा के रखना. But Shastra's idea of niyantran is only to say, be wise to choose. That availability to choose. I'll come back to the previous. So your capacity, entirely what's happening in the Antakarnam. Antakarnam, don't worry if you don't get a full perception now or an idea now. Just keep gathering it, because by the time we move forward, you will have the whole picture. At this point, remember, Antakarnam means, first thing, it doesn't die. It has death, but only in knowledge, self-knowledge. Till then, Antakarnam is a continuity. So your present state of mind is actually a continuity of your past held perceptions, and how you've selected them, how you've organized them, and how you've interpreted them, and how you've reacted to them, and how you've responded to them. All of this is one bundle called mind. That mind, control of mind means I am now able to control it at executing. Say, supposing I've chosen a path of, say, moksha for me. Supposing I say, okay, that's my goal of life. Then my selection of perceptions, I start doing. Means I just cannot allow, like I said, if there's going to be a whole lot of prohibited perceptions for me, there will be a control. Even if your past may have had a memory of it, you still in the present will control it. It's actually extremely empowering if you see it in the correct light. Without mind control, there is peace of mind will be extremely temporary. What we understand as peace of mind is when we get something in life, we are happy and we are peaceful. That happiness from, sense pleasure is what we understand as peace. Or once in a while, मन चुप रहने को मन करता है तो किसी से, but no, Shanti is in spite of your thoughts, in spite of your mind being fully engaged in the present, the inner mind is tranquil, is peace, and it definitely is associated with how you conduct your present life and how your past with the present, past as in your mind and its perceptions, are handled in the present so that you regain your mental composure back. This is, in a nutshell, Mano Nigraha. Shastra says, once the Mano Nigraha, supposing someone says, I can't. This is, humne to itna, because I've put it as a picture and it seems as if it's obviously this is just for understanding. But when we look into our own minds, firstly, most of us are not able to separate one thought from another. इतनी तेज चलते हैं हमारे thoughts कि हमें पता ही नहीं कि thought किस बारे में सोच रहा है. What is the topic of the thought? What am I thinking? We take everything as correct. Whatever happens in our mind is correct. So if I'm angry, I'm angry. If I'm jealous, I'm jealous. If I'm fearful, I'm fearful. If I have anxiety, I have anxiety. Everything is correct over here. Mind में ये हो रहा है तो मुझे भी हो रहा है. ये हो रहा है तो मुझे भी हो रहा है. Means my mind may be reactive. Shastra begins at the point of saying your mind may be reactive, but you need not be reactive. The difference between the mind as an instrument that you have and you who is actually the holder of the instrument, user of that instrument. You are the one who is managing the instrument. And if you're a weak manager, which you see, supposing organizations, they have very great visions, but many organizations fall because of the management. The problem why MBAs have become popular today is because management is an issue. Not just in the world. Why is it an issue? Because the management actually starts from the mind. Self-management is the program. Self-management is the Vedic view. Self-management is the Vedic goal. Self-management is the primary purpose with which you get your happiness, in which you have happiness. Without self-management, whatever happiness you have, if you get by fluke or by some measures, you have some instant pleasures, we call them, Gita calls them as instant pleasures, born from the sense contacts. The nature of instant pleasure is by word instant. So as soon as they've come, so soon they go. And that's not what is an abiding happiness. So in Mano Nigraha, with Mano Nigraha, you gain this abiding happiness. But supposing your mind has become absolutely, in today, there are many times, not supposing, it's true for everybody, however much you may know, our minds have gathered a lot of strength from our unknowing states. That once you have lost your mind, Shastra says it's still not a lost case. If you can't control yourself here, at the level of Antakarna, the selection, the organization, and the interpretation, at the level of Antakarna, if you can't control your mind past and future, keeping it in the present, not acting on Raga Dvesh, not acting on Ahankar, not acting on not reactive but active, if you can do all these things in yourself, you will have peace of mind. You don't need anything else. But there are many people and many times in our own selves, in spite of everything, that there are certain aspects in us where the mind is now so strong that I don't have much control over it. That time Shastra says, control it at the level of the perception, organ. इंद्रियों के लेवल पे, बाह्य इंद्रिय के लेवल पे इसको निग्रह कर दो. What is Shama? अंत इंद्रिय, अंतःकरण के लेवल पे stop it. What is the second value of the Shama Adi Shataka? Damaha. What is Damaha? Bahya Indriya Nigraha. So control it at the level of your senses. That means if my mind is excited with something and I'm not able to stop it, if I have developed weakness for something and I'm not able, at least remove yourself from there. Physically remove the perception. Supposing I'm an addict and I have a weakness for alcohol, and I have this alcohol over here, a group of alcohol, my friends are having a party and they are going to have alcohol, etc. And I know I have a weakness for it, etc., etc. The first thing, or rather the only thing left at that point is remove, abstain from it. Abstain is a very dangerous word again. Means simply remove from there. Put a physical plug. Deny the physical contact. Execute control that your contact will not be established with the object. Clip off the contact. Indriya Nigraha. So that's like one meaning. Indriyo ka control karo. The more joyful meaning rather would be, again, I establish a control of what senses I perceive, what senses I choose to perceive with. Means what perceptions I choose for myself. Means there are certain places I will not go. There are certain foods I will not have. There are certain things that I will not hear, or there are certain things I will hear. There are certain things I will see. So controlling your sense engagements. हम क्या देख रहे हैं, हम क्या खा रहे हैं, हम क्या सुन रहे हैं, हम क्या फील कर रहे हैं, हम क्या स्मेल कर रहे हैं. All these things become a part of your regulation. So two things. One thing is, if the mind has become absolutely weak, then by force I may have to disconnect the sense contact. I may have to force myself to do it. That's a control. That means if Shama has failed, I still have, that fuse button. हमारे हर चीज में एक बैकअप प्लान होता है ना. When it's like Shastra has, everything has, if plan A fails, then there's a plan B. So if my mind has lost its peace, and if, say, I see something or I see someone and I get angry seeing that person, or any amount of things, and at least for some time till you are able to reason with yourself, till you are able to recompose yourself, avoid contact. But avoiding contact is not going to be the solution, but it may be helpful temporarily. Your idea should be to work back on Shamaha. Your idea should be to work back on not getting disturbed in the first place. So the highest thing starts from Viveka. Viveka generates Vairagya. If Vairagya has some sort of still needs some specific areas, those specific areas that I am obsessive about or I have strong Ragdvesh about, I need Shamaha. If Shamaha I am not able to do, I need Damaha. Damaha means control the sense organs itself before you lose the thing. And between Shamaha, Damaha, the two controls, the two regulations, they kind of go simultaneously. Means one without the other may not be possible. One will involve the other. So if I have Shamaha, it's going to be difficult if I keep my senses. If I say, okay, I have control over it, but I go on engaging my senses in the same perception, very soon your mind will lose control again. So it's kind of go together. Damaha will promote Shamaha, Shamaha will promote Damaha, Shamaha, Damaha will promote Vairagya, Vairagya will promote Viveka, Viveka will promote Vairagya, Vairagya will promote Shamaha, Shamaha will promote Damaha. And you grow in strength as a person. You grow peaceful as a person. So with this, I will end here today. And if there are any questions on it, you can send me by mail. That would be the most preferable mode. Or else we'll take up a class on it and later on. And or you can send a message. I'll take up as a question. Or we'll have a discussion, whatever needs for it. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhave.
The broadcast of Facebook Live